to 1000 Actually Fun Books Everyone Should Read. And today we are reviewing Burn For Me by Ilona Andrews. Could be Ilona. It's a fantasy action romance. And I'll start with saying that this is part of a series. So this book is the first in a trilogy. And then there is a novella, and then there is a second trilogy. And I've heard rumors that there might be a future trilogy, but so far it's just those 6.5 books. So we're just doing this first one, although when I read it and consumed it and loved it so much that from the library book, I got myself my own copy. Yes, I bought a copy of the book that tells you that I really liked it. And I ended up reading 5 of the 6.5 books before I ran out of time. So I'm still going to read the last book. I guess I read 5.5 because I read the novella too. And I really enjoyed them. The first book is probably the best, or the first trilogy, I guess I'll say, is the best so far. I would, if you like the book, I would certainly recommend reading more of it. But I am just going to, I think, do this one book. It will be included on my list of 1,000 great books, but it's not one that I'm probably going to include the rest of the series. Okay, so let's start with what is it about? So our plot is pretty straightforward. We have our heroine, Nevada. She is the main character. The point of view is a first-person point of view, and it's her point of view throughout the entire story, excluding the prologue and the epilogue. And what happens is she is a private investigator of a small family firm and is pressured into almost, I wouldn't say blackmail, that's the wrong term, but she's given an offer she can't refuse to find a pyromaniac bad guy. And there's nothing she can do about it. She thinks it's a suicidal mission, but she has to accept. So she has to find this pyromaniac bad guy. And the other character, our other hero, our protagonist, Rogan, the romantic partner, is also after the same guy. So they go through many adventures, lots of action and smoldering tension and before they encounter and get to the bad guy. And so let me talk a little briefly, that's pretty much the plot in a nutshell. I'll talk briefly about the world building, because this is a fantasy and it has some interesting world building. I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's fun. So what you have is a world where probably a couple hundred years ago, a serum came out and started being injected in people, and they discovered that a percentage of humans end up with superpowers. And the book does not go into all the different kinds of exclusive, whole list of superpowers, but you encounter them sporadically throughout the book and throughout the series. They keep increasing the number of various types of superpowers. The superpowers have also created a different social structure. So the more powerful your power is, the higher up on the social ladder you are, right? And so Rogan is introduced as a very powerful telekinetic. He can move things with his mind, specifically inanimate objects with his mind. And he's one of the most powerful ones out there. He can move a building if he wanted, if he was motivated enough. The heroine, Nevada, has a completely separate type of power. She has a truth discerning power. She can tell if anybody lies to her. Always completely accurate. She can also, in certain circumstances, compel others to tell her the truth. Demand an answer to a question. So they end up teaming up to do the bad guys, and the bad guy is he's got control of the elements. He is a pyro elemental control person, hence he really likes fire. So he's a bad guy. And there's a bunch of others you encounter, people who animate objects and people who control animals and people who can do illusions and all sorts of things. But those are the two main characters and what they do. And I liked the world building. It made for an interesting series of how do you encounter other people, how do you interact with people, how are the politics going on about this in the background, and the situation with Nevada's family, how they were basically excluded because they were basically nobodies, and then this circumstance kind of elevates Nevada as far as her superpowers go, as far as people being aware of what she can do, and that can cause problems. So that's an interesting, I just thought an interesting setup. This is also a very action-packed book. So this is not a leisurely romance, of the Amish or something like that. No, this is action. Okay, so speaking of romance, like I said when I introduced this last video, I wasn't sure if this was a romance or not. The person that recommended it to me said, no, it's not a romance. It's a fantasy action book. And so I'm like, okay, well, is it a romance or not? Because there can be books that have romance in them but aren't romance books, right? Like if you think The Empire Strikes Back movie, for example, that has a romance between Han and Leia. It's not a huge part, but it's definitely there throughout the entire movie, right? But nobody is going to classify that movie as a romance. It's going to be a space opera, science, sci-fi, that kind of thing. But, romance doesn't even come into the picture. So if I were to shelve this on a library shelf, what would I put it? Would I put it in fantasy or would I put it in romance? And my first initial, as I read through it, I would have put it in fantasy. Okay, I think that the plot elements kind of overshadow the romance in a lot of areas. But giving it a little deeper thought, thinking it through, okay, what exactly is a romance? What are the characteristics of a romance? And does it have all those things? Like if I got rid of all the plot and the fantasy elements, would I still have a complete romance book in here? And really, yes, you do. There's all those elements, especially of like the bodice ripper, the classic romance. You have the handsome, rich, powerful, famous, and yet distant male who, with the female that is pretty but poor and doesn't have the social or political power, and but they encounter each other and she attracts his attention somehow, and then they have lots of banter and smolder and simmer at each other, and the sexual tension just crackles between them, and then eventually something happens and they get together and live happily ever after, except not quite in this book. So it has all those elements, that their relationship is really front and center in this, not just what they're doing, but them getting to know each other as they do it. And so yes, I guess it is a romance too. But if you're somebody who really likes romance, you'd probably really like it. If you're someone who doesn't really like romance, you'd probably still like it too, as long as you like that kind of pulpy action storyline. Because it's fun. It's just a fun storyline. I will say though, this the happily ever after. So I'm not going to give you spoilers for the plot, but here's a minor spoiler. It's pretty small, but it is a spoiler. They don't get together at the end of the story, and that's really kind of shocking for a romance book. Like if you went to a library and pulled a romance novel off the shelf, 99.99% of the time there is a happily ever after ending. That's just what a romance is. It's two people, and throughout the entire book they're getting to know each other and kind of getting closer and closer, and at the end they get together. I mean, that's what a romance is. And so the fact that at the end of this, Nevada basically tells Rogan, no, this is not happening, is kind of shocking. It's an unexpected ending. And now, long term in the trilogy proper, that's not the case. You have the proper romantic ending of they live happily ever after. But for this book, that's not the case. And as a reader, I agree with her reasoning, which is surprising here. So the way it is set up in this, you kind of get the impression that it's all physical attraction, right? They're both very physically attracted to each other, and it does spark off the page, but you don't get the impression that it's anything deeper for Rogan. And besides that, his personality kind of comes across as a little sociopathic or psychopathic, not really caring about other people. And Nevada looks at that and says, you are super attractive. I would love to go to bed with you, but you're not long-term commitment man, and I don't want to deal with a fling. No, thank you. And she turns him down and says, no, thanks, and walks away. And that's how the book ends. And that circumstance feels very authentic. You're looking at it and going, the romance itself may not be super authentic, but her reasoning behind what she's doing does feel authentic, and you like that about her. At least I did. I was like, oh wow, that's, it's a good character to have done something smart instead of being like, oh, who cares, we'll fall into bed anyway and regret it in the morning. I mean, people do that, and books do that all the time, but it was kind of nice to see that different in this book. If you go further on the series, the author does also undermine some of those tropes in romances as well, like an ex, somebody that Rogan used to date or was engaged to or something like that, comes in one of the books, and shockingly, Nevada, because they're in a relationship at this point, is not jealous. I mean, she's minorly jealous, but she's not insecure jealous, if that makes sense. She's not sitting there going, he's gonna leave me for her. Instead, she's just like, I really wish that person would stop hanging off my, boyfriend. And this, again, this writing, I'm just saying this because the writing is better than the average romance to me, because they have that taste of, wow, I like the characters' choices. They're not totally stereotyped here. So it's just nice. I like that a lot. Okay, so besides the unexpected ending, I also liked the humor. So I'm going to read you a short passage in this book to kind of give you a taste of what I thought was, they've got multiple points of humor in the book. They did a good job with that. And just to give you a sample of that. So this is on page 42 and 43. Not very long, but I'll read it to you. Pierce is the bad guy. I opened a writing app and began typing what I knew about Pierce. Vain. Terminal fear of t-shirts or any other garment that would cover his pectorals. Deadly. Didn't hesitate to kill. Holding him at gunpoint would result in me being barbecued. Likes burning things. Now there's an understatement. Good information to have, but not useful for finding him. Anti-government. Neither here nor there. So far, my best plan to catch him would be to build a monument of gasoline cans and explosives, stick a property of U.S. government sign on it, and then throw a t-shirt over Pierce's head when he showed up to explode it. Yes, this would totally work. If only. So as you can kind of see, she's got a good sense of humor. And then there are several other times throughout it that you kind of giggle and smile about what, turn of phrase or whatever. They did a good job. The trilogy, I say, the beginning, again, this is why I'm kind of sticking with the first book rather than the best, the going on farther. The farther you get in the series, I think the less good humor it gets. It still has lots of action. Every book has lots of action, but this one was the best. Okay, so I like the humor. I like the action. I liked the unexpected ending. I pretty much liked most of this book. It was great. The only thing I really didn't like was the romance did center more around lust rather than love. I mean, but it turns out to work really well, like I said, because of the unexpected ending. So I really didn't have much to say about this book that I didn't like. So it does make it to my list. Yay, we've got another book. And I'm pretty excited about that. I hope that you read it and enjoy it. All right, part 2. So my next book is going to be something very different. I like doing very different from book to book. It's going to be nonfiction. So I'm doing Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. So this book, it says it's rediscovering America on the Appalachian Trail. So I don't know anything about this, but it sounds like it is somebody who decided to do the major hike down the Appalachian Trail, which, if you're not aware of, is a really long, would take you months to walk it if you were going to walk it straight through adventure. And he is going to try doing it. And it's supposed to be funny. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. So I'm thinking it'll be great. So that's what we're going to do next. And I will see you next week. Thank you for watching.